Hi, everybody. I hope you find us over here. We had a little trouble getting it to go live from the link that we had set up. I am Michele Meek, who is the founder of NewEnglandFilm.com. And I'm here today to answer questions about film distribution or working in the film industry or making films, getting your films into film festivals, whatever you can think of. I'll be here for the next 55 minutes. So if you have questions in that amount of time, then you can send it to the chat and I will do my best to answer those questions. I recently published the book, Independent Female Filmmakers, a chronicle through interviews, profiles, and manifestos. And in the book, which I edited, it's a compilation of interviews, sort of a then and now with female filmmakers, some of which were working in film industry from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s to the 2000s. And it talks about how all the different obstacles that they faced, but it's really profiling them and really prioritizing their own words with Q&As and manifestos that they wrote. So that's my most recent project, but of course I'm still running New England Film. I also founded The Independent, which is an online magazine, which was originally produced by the Association of Independent Film and Video Makers. And that is a magazine that profiles independent and grassroots filmmakers. They do a 10 to watch films each year, filmmakers each year. So they highlight new or up and coming directors. And that I've been working on for a long time, since 2007. So I'm interested in hearing your questions. This is an Ask Me Anything. So the point is that I'm supposed to be here to answer what you would like to ask. So maybe someone can post a question. Otherwise, I'll just keep talking for an hour about whatever I want, I guess. I have kind of an unusual background because I decided to go back to school. I had originally, when I went to college, at Boston College, I graduated and then I went directly into the Emerson College MFA program. And I was actually there for writing. I started as poetry and then ultimately decided to do screenwriting. And when I was there, I helped work on a short film that we directed, well, someone else directed, and I was one of the writers on the project. And that was when I knew that I actually would rather direct as well as write. Then I went back to school to get my PhD in about 2010. And I did that at University of Rhode Island. And now I've been working as a professor at Bridgewater State University. This semester, I'm actually in Berlin, and so I am doing some research and writing and lecturing here. Any questions so far? I know that New England Film has really become popular with its Facebook group, and it's, people follow it on social media, on Twitter. We post jobs. The jobs is definitely the most popular page on the site because people are always looking for gigs in the film industry, obviously. And but we also have an industry directory. So if you're working in the industry in any capacity, you should make sure that you have a directory listing so that you can promote your services and what you do. We also run an online film festival. I'm not seeing questions. Let's see. Oh, here. I'm sorry. There are questions. I had this top chat on, which was filtering all of your questions out. And we have an online film festival that we started about 10 years ago, which is an online New England Film Festival, and we collaborate with local film festivals. All right. So we've got a couple of questions here. So let's take a look. What is the best place, organization for women to seek grants or funding for their film? I know about Women Make Movies, Fractured Atlas, but those seem like docs only. There's also Chicken and Egg Pictures. In case you don't know about that, take a look at that. They do a lot of grants for, I think, feature directors, but they prioritize new filmmakers. So that's a really good one if you're looking for a grant. There's also a relatively new company called Game Changer Films, and they have a different model, which is not a grant, but they actually invest in female filmmakers. So that's a bit higher level. So they've done recently Karen Kusama's film, Jennifer Fox's film. So they're working with directors, obviously, who are pretty well established, and they want to make sure that there's a return on investment, obviously, so that they can sustain their business model of investing in women filmmakers. Then I know that there's often, Women Make Movies does webinars about getting grants and funding specifically for women filmmakers. So I would definitely check out those. And then I would also recommend, there's groups like Femme Fatales and obviously Women in Film and Video New England. Joining those groups and networking within those groups is a great way to find out about more resources for our female filmmakers. All right, let's see here. Seeking new venues for a smallish film fest, and a few have fallen through on me. Would like greater Boston area. Any ideas? Tori, what do you mean by that specifically? You have film and you're looking to place it in film festivals? Is that what you mean? Let's see if you answer that. I'll get back to that when I get a little bit more information. Let's see. Other funding sources for New England-based project. I would also check out the LEF Foundation, LEF, because they specifically do grants for filmmakers who are based in the New England area. And the other thing that you can do is every state has a film council that finances, does grants for filmmakers. So, in Rhode Island, there's the Rhode Island State, it's RISCA, RISCA, but I forget exactly what it stands for. And there's the Mass Media Council. So every state really has a place. So sorry, I lost my train of thought. I can't multitask on this venue very well. All right. So check out Left Foundation. They're a great organization as well. All right, so Tori, you've got a new film festival focused on diversity and nonprofit corporate funding. You're looking for some maybe venue ideas. So, well, it depends on how large you want of a venue and how, and if it needs to be a film space. I know for Coolidge Corner Theater, obviously has a big theater space, but they have a smaller theater space upstairs. A lot of film festivals have been really successful in collaborating with local universities to use space because sometimes they have really great space. I know Emerson has a terrific space, the Bright Screening Room, where they host events. There's also Rhode Island School of Design has theaters, and they partner with the Providence Children's Film Festival and others, so that you can have screenings in those kinds of places. That might be a good way to go, developing some partnerships so that you can get some screening spaces. If you're looking for something super small, I know there's Jupiter Hall in New Hampshire, which is a newer space, smaller space, and they're hosting different kinds of events, and they would probably be open to ideas. Somerville Theater, obviously, is another space that has a bunch of smaller theaters and the IFF Boston has their screenings there. So there's some lots of great spaces around. So I've got a question here about the TEDx talk that I did recently about why we're still confused about consent, rewriting our stories of seduction. So I presented that in October and it went live on YouTube in December. And I've gotten some good reactions so far from people. Definitely, there are people who are curious to understand more and want to push back on the idea. Really, what I'm arguing is that when we depict consent, we have to be conscious of how we're depicting it. And when we're watching scenes, any scene of sex is basically a scene of sexual consent. And so when we're watching those parts in movies and they come up all the time, we have to realize that we're actually learning about consent, and we're sort of teaching our children about consent when those parts in movies come up. And if we don't have conversations about the parts that are depicting something that's clearly wrong, then they're getting the wrong message. But I'm hoping to get more feedback on that too. So I would love everyone to watch it and give me comments or thoughts. All right, here. Some comments about fiscal sponsorship here. So someone is commenting that Fractured Axis does fiscal sponsorship. They don't actually fund films. Fiscal sponsorship is a great way to go if you're thinking about raising money for your film in a nonprofit type capacity, because fiscal sponsorship allows you to have basically a nonprofit status as an individual filmmaker. So there are lots of organizations locally that do this, that support local filmmakers. There's Center for Independent Documentary, there's Filmmakers Collaborative, and of course there's a lot of national organizations like Women Make Movies and others that do this. Obviously Fractured Atlas is one of these, but what happens is you become under the umbrella of this other organization, and typically the other organization takes 5% of whatever you raise, but it enables you to go out and raise funds as a nonprofit, so that if someone donated $1,000 to your film, they would get a tax deduction for that donation. And so even if you're raising money through friends and family, that can be a great way to do it, because you're able to get they are able to get a tax write-off for that kind of donation. Okay. Yeah, great point that RISCA and other organizations often have grant writing seminars that are free and workshops. They host workshops that help you, create a better application for their grants, essentially, which is smart. All right, let me go back up because I missed some questions on here, I think. So new features on New England Film. So I think that what's going to be coming in New England Film in the future are a couple of things. One, we are changing a little bit how we do our film festival. We are still collaborating with the local film festivals across New England, but last year was the first year we decided to do an open call for films, basically, so that filmmakers could directly submit. We've kept the submission rates pretty low, so it's $15 for films that are 10 minutes and under, and then 20 minutes for films that are 10 to 30 minutes. It's a short film festival only. So there is the opportunity to submit films directly that way through Film Freeway, and we'll be announcing that soon. That's going to be opening on March 1st. We also have had a lot of interest in creating something for our jobs page where people would be able to subscribe to different types of jobs so that they could get an alert when there's an editing job or something like that. So that's something that we're actively looking into and thinking about. I've also really been thinking about doing some online workshops because, as many of you know, I've been an educator for a long time, and that's something that I really am passionate about and I enjoy doing. And this would be a way to do something online that was focused with a smaller group of people, probably no more than 10 to 20 people at a particular time. And so I would love to hear any ideas that you all have on courses that you might be interested in. That these would be paid courses. But what types of things, and some of them could be really small courses. We could do a webinar with some casting agents locally, for instance. That could be one. But I also had the idea of doing something where it was sort of a short film boot camp, where you got all of the ins and outs of how to create, write a better short film, plan for festivals and distribution, and sort of set your short film up for whatever success you want it to have. So that's another idea. So I'm interested in what ideas you might have for those kinds of workshops too. So those are some of the ideas of late. See another question here. Okay, Megan asks, advice for younger aspiring filmmakers. Should you go for it and make a film if you have the idea, or wait till you have enough experience? I would say that you actually never have enough experience. You know, a lot of filmmakers, even very successful or highly profiled filmmakers, always kind of like their last film the best and look back on some of their earlier work as lesser, just because you change over time, right? So I think it's a good idea to know what the purpose of making a film is whenever you're making it. So is your purpose to learn? Is your purpose to make money? Is your purpose to get some notoriety for yourself as a director? Is your purpose a cause? Sometimes people make films because they want to change something about the world, and that they don't care if it gets them personally famous, but they want to really move a cause forward. So the more you know about that purpose in making your film, the better off you'll be, because it will just mean that you know how to direct your action. So if the goal is to learn, then, I mean, I've done the 48-hour film project a couple of times, and I think that that's a great sort of low stakes way of, you know, writing, directing, and editing a film in 48 hours so that you can make it happen. There's also contests like the Women in Comedy Festival, things like that. But I think that you have to start making work in order to learn how to make work. I mean, there's only so much kind of reading and watching that you can do before you start picking up a camera and moving stuff around. The great benefit today is that it's just a lot cheaper for all of us to make film. So the technology has made it so that, you know, very easily you can start practicing. One thing I will say, though, is that if you have any goal of getting your film in a film festival, and this isn't just a learning experience, then you really need to think about the quality of the writing before you start shooting. And you need to think about what is the sort of festival strategy before you start shooting. Because if you don't do those things, you're really undercutting any potential that the film is going to have. You know, when you make a film, you have to think about the niche that it fits in. Yeah, it's nice to imagine, oh, maybe my film will get into Sundance or something like that, and it'll be a huge hit. But A, that really doesn't happen very often. And B, even if you were to get into Sundance, that is still not enough, especially as a short film. Then what? You're going to need to have a plan for how you're going to either maximize the visibility for this short film or maximize the return on investment or something like that. There are very few short films that go to Sundance or get nominated for an Academy Award, et cetera. So really thinking about what it is that you want to do and making sure that it's something that you have planned for. What other questions? Yeah, so there's one of the ways for film festival, I see some comments going back and forth about film festivals ideas. Thinking about festivals in terms of niches, but also in terms of regions. So for example, when I did my recent short film, Imagine Cole 37, it's a film about two girls who imagine their way through an adventure playground in Berlin. And so it has children in the film, and it's also kind of an offbeat hybrid of documentary, fiction, and animation. So when I was looking to what kind of festivals would be the most interested in featuring it, I was thinking about a lot of children's film festivals, because that was the audience that I was really looking to reach with that film, because I wanted it to start a conversation about risk and play in America. And so I screened it at a Playworker conference. I screened it at several children's film festivals across the country. And then I also took it to schools, so that I hosted it at schools and then had conversations with parents afterwards. So my goal for the film was not to make money on it, which I didn't. And it ultimately was really about sort of promoting this idea of risky play and how it's taught in Berlin, Germany, and what that might mean for American parents. Some class ideas: marketing workshop. Interesting. Marketing a film workshop. I like that. Teaching media production for summer camp programs. What do you mean by that? There are some programs for kids. I know the Rhode Island International Film Festival does a Kids Eye filmmaking camp. And actually, at one point, I did an article on New England Film about camps that were for kids to learn filmmaking. Developing creative arts curriculum for youth. Oh, I see. Yeah, that's interesting. So maybe teaching other educators on how to develop curriculum for youth. That's an interesting idea, actually. I like that. So teaching the teachers. That's interesting. And I think there is a lot more interest now in high schools to have to learn about how to teach their students to use media. In fact, one of my students at Bridgewater came in, and I was teaching a multimedia storytelling class, and she came in already having done a lot in her high school. So the class for her was a lot of, was kind of repetitive, at least for the video part. We also do podcasts and pechakuchas, but for the video part, she was pretty experienced and had already made several films. And that was because her school was really on point with teaching them how to do that. That's a great idea. I like that. So here's someone else, Rosemary, saying, never wait to make your film. I knew nothing when I made my first ever short. Honestly, it went horrible. It took 3 years. And then it was in the Rhode Island International Film Festival. I learned a lot what not to do. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, the first film, I'm trying to think. I did the 48-hour film project actually 3 times in 3 different cities. I did it in New York, I did it in Boston, and then I did it in Rhode Island, in Providence. And the New York one was the first one, and that film hopefully will never see the light of day because it was really bad. We had a really hard time writing it. So we had this idea that we would all collaborate on the writing process, and that just went so badly because we had, like 6 or 7 people in a room. Friday night, you get your ideas, you get your character and your prop and all that. And we just went through all these ideas and nobody could really decide on anything. And then everybody at some point left and we had no script to shoot the next day. So, I just kind of came up with something. The second time around, I decided to do it a little bit differently. First of all, I had decided that no matter what the genre we got, we were going to also make it a mockumentary, because I thought that mockumentaries played really well at that festival in particular. And then the other thing that I did differently was that I had someone else write it so that I could go to sleep that night and he would write it. And then in the morning, when we had to start shooting it, we would have a script. And that worked really well. He had an idea and I called him as soon as we got all the ideas. He started writing. He had kind of a rough idea so I could at least cast the thing that night, which I did. And then, we all met Saturday morning. I also had a separate director of photography for that one, which was also the way to go. There's a couple of things I think that you when you're an inexperienced filmmaker that you benefit a lot from having someone take care of the picture and the sound that's not you as the director is extremely beneficial. The next project we did, I think the script turned out better than all the rest, but we did not have a separate DP, and it really shows. And the film doesn't look as good as it could have if we had had someone who was like kind of dedicated, experienced and dedicated to that. So we kind of all just took turns on camera. So it's a little crazy, but the thing that's great about the 48-hour project, and you don't need to do the 48-hour project to do this, you could just simply say, we're going to make a film this weekend, is that you have something at the end of it. And there's something extremely satisfying about doing that. I am definitely more of a do and then think as opposed to think, and never do. There's a benefit to both. Obviously, you could make a lot of bad films if you just kind of keep doing it without thinking anything. But you also, it's good to just get out there and start making stuff. Let's see. An idea for a doc that I would like to do, although I never made a film of any kind from the ground up. Where do you advise starting? Well, again, it depends on what your purpose is. I think that sometimes you're making something because you're just passionate about it, and it doesn't really matter where it's going. I mean, when I was doing the Cole 37 film, I fell in love with this playground in Berlin, and I wanted to make a film there. And I really didn't have a fully fleshed out vision for what that film would even look like, or where it would be placed eventually, or anything. I just knew I wanted to, while I was in Berlin, make a film in this park. And so that was my goal. If you want to make a documentary and you're motivated to do that from the ground up, then you need to think about how are you going to do that? What are you going to use for camera? Are you going to have someone else shooting with you? What are you going to be doing yourself? What do you need to get help with? Thinking all of that through, I think is really important, so that it's not so overwhelming. I personally don't think it's a great idea to start with grants. I think you have to get out there and start shooting a little bit with a documentary before you start applying for grants, because most of them are going to want to see some kind of trailer or something, some evidence of the work that you're doing. With a documentary in particular, as Barbara Koppel says, if you don't have access, you don't have a film. So the most important thing is, do you have the access that you need in order to make this film? When I made the film at Cole 37, if I did not have access to that playground, then I would not have been able to make the film that I wanted to make. So that is really the most important aspect that you need to consider: how to get that access, and what is it going to get you. So how do you recommend finding actors for projects if you don't have friends interested in it? Yeah, definitely posting on different groups on Facebook. It's free to post a job on New England Film for actors. We have a section for volunteer actors and also for volunteer editors, whatever you're kind of looking for, as well as paid positions. So people who are only looking for paid work can just see that, but people who are looking to volunteer to get some experience are able to see those kinds of offerings as well. And I've met over the years, New England Film's been online for 20 years, and I've met many, many people who have found their entire cast and crew through New England Film. So I definitely recommend that. Make sure you have a burning to keep you awake at night to make a film. Yeah, I do think that filmmaking is one of those things that maybe there's people that go in it to make money, and I think there is a path for that. But most people who are making films that I meet are doing it because they're extremely passionate about what they want to do, and it's almost like they're compelled to do it. It's not so much like they even think it's a very smart idea to be spending their time that way, but it's more just, I need to do this. This is my outlet, my creative outlet. And so absolutely true. Documentaries can take years to make, actually. I was co-producer on a film, Salvage, which is screening at South by Southwest this March. And the director, I don't even know how many years she spent shooting and then editing this film, maybe almost a decade or something. So it can be a really long process. Making a short documentary is definitely easier and quicker. So I guess I would recommend, think through exactly if this is a feature length project or if this is a short project, because the constraints are much different and the needs are much different. And a documentary has to have a story arc just like any other fiction narrative film. And a short film has a different kind of arc than a narrative, a feature, documentary. So thinking that through is important. Let's see. I'm looking to see any other questions out there. Anyone that just popped in too, I was looking for thoughts on workshops, online workshops, maybe in-person workshops too. I mean, we did our Stepping Up Your Career in the Film Industry was extremely popular last year. And, that I guess could be its own course as well. Tell me about some of the projects that you're all working on, and what are some of the obstacles that you're coming across, or what are some of the issues that you're facing? Shameless self-promotion. Why not? Who doesn't want to do shameless self-promotion? Let's see what else we've got. Yeah, I think that, so Rosemary, you talk about the kind of, the rejection rate. And I'm assuming you're talking about festivals. This is something that people don't often talk about, but is a real issue in the film industry for independent filmmakers, which is that, we all submit our films to film festivals on Film Freeway or Without a Box, but a lot of film festivals really curate a good portion of their festival by going to other festivals and seeking out films that they like and asking and inviting those filmmakers to submit their films to that festival. So that and that makes it that you might look at 1,000 films were submitted and 50 got in. So I have a 1 in whatever chance, but it's actually even smaller than that, because some portion of those 50 films are actually curated directly by the festival programming staff. One of the benefits of the online New England Film Festival is we technically don't have a limit to the number of films that we could screen, I guess, because it's online. But most festivals have to think about that. And if you have a long short film, if your short film is, 27 minutes, it's harder to program than if your short film is 3 minutes, because they have to squeeze it in. They have to find films that go along with this. One of the things that I really love about the Independent Film Festival of Boston, the IFFB, is that it's really well organized in terms of the short film curation. The films really that are screened together really go together and have some thematic or artistic connection that makes it extremely enjoyable to watch them, and to be part of a festival like that is great. But thinking the way you can reduce that rejection rate, to be honest, is by knowing more about the festival. It's just like anything else. You increase your odds of making something happen when you inform yourself. So does this film festival screen this kind of film? Imagine Cole 37 was a good fit for IFF Boston because they tend to like quirky films that don't fit neatly into genre or that are pushing some boundary, right? And so that was a good fit for that kind of festival. Whereas, other festivals, it's not a good fit. I mean, I actually don't even submit to Sundance because I haven't yet made a film that I think is an appropriate fit for Sundance. So there's really no point in submitting a film that is not a Sundance film. You're really just throwing your money away. Now, if you want to think about planning your your festival strategy, you do have to think about what is the best festival that you are the most likely to get accepted at for this particular film. And then you want to start there. So if you have some connection to a film festival, if you have some regional connection to a film festival, they might be more likely to accept you. Some thematic or artistic reason that this festival is a good fit for you. Those are all really good reasons to focus in on that one. The problem with Sundance is that it's Sundance and Tribeca and a lot of these festivals, they're great festivals that show a lot of great filmmakers, but they also show a lot of the same filmmakers over and over again. And they also have kind of what is it called? Kind of like a step-by-step process. People who go to the Sundance Institute and have their films there then become more likely to have their films at the Sundance Film Festival. So it's if you're part of that chain, Tribeca Film has grants. Oh, they're another one that does grants, by the way, for documentary films. That's another way that if you get one of those grants, you're now being cultivated by Tribeca or Sundance. And I've seen lots of times filmmakers who kind of get into a little, you're kind of become part of this club, and now your work is kind of looked at a little bit more closely than just the average person who's going to be submitting something on their Film Freeway site. So that's really important. So, any other questions out there? Is everyone working in documentary? Are there some actors out there, or who are you all? Documentary about the relationship between the artists of the Harlem Renaissance period. I think that's okay. An artist author who has a book who would like to make it into a film. Cool. So I guess, Marcia, my question is, are you a filmmaker? Are you interested in doing it yourself? Or are you looking for somebody who's going to make your film into produce it for you? Looking for someone. Okay. Then I think that your goal would be to watch different films, especially short filmmakers, and see if you find someone who has your sensibility. If you're looking to go more Hollywood with it, then there's a little bit of a different path. So let me just talk about those two paths, because even though you might have one idea, other people might have others. But so if you were looking to find an independent director that can make it, and maybe you want to be sort of part of the process, a writer, for example, on the project, then really going to different events and networking and meeting people, watching films, and maybe reaching out to directors who you think might be interested. There's also websites like Inktip, where you can post sort of pitches for projects. And that might be a good way to do it. If you were looking to go for a kind of different path, bigger path, then you might have to adapt it into a screenplay first and then try to have that pitched. Basically, screenplays can be sent out to production companies as long as you have either an agent or an entertainment lawyer working with you. So you would need to have one of those people who could send it out to production companies. But then there's lots of websites, like there's Stage 32, and they host lots of pitch sessions that you can join into. You have to pay, but you can sign up and then you can pitch your project. But I would spend more time kind of cultivating it as a film concept before you did any of those things, because once you've kind of pitched it, then you can't go back and be like, oh, I've revised it, now it's better. You sort of get one shot at that process with each company. And sometimes it seems like there might be information shared, so they might know that a project has been pitched. But so you might need a screenwriter. So, I mean, you could do a call for a screenwriter, and you could hire someone, or you could say, I'm seeking a screenwriter collaborator. And that's definitely something that you could find. But you want to make sure that you're working with someone who really knows what they're doing, and you'd want to know what their credentials were. and what your partnership was really going to be, what kind of money is there going to be transferred. If it's not for pay, then what are the terms of the agreement? Obviously, you own the copyright on the work, but if someone takes a lot of time and does the writing of the script, how are you going to establish something that's fair? There's lots of great entertainment lawyers like Sandy Foreman who can draft agreements between partners and work with independent people. And that is important to think through in advance, because I've seen her speak many times, and she'll say that, a lot of times people come to her after there's a problem. And it would be so much easier if somebody went to her before and set up the terms of the agreement. But, if you had to do that yourself and you really couldn't afford a lawyer, then I would say really put everything in writing. If this happens, if that happens, who owns what are the rights, what's the division of money and ownership, et cetera. So wait, Marcia, do you have your book already published, or are you, you've started sending query letters out to screenwriting agents, or are you trying to pitch it to, okay, so it's published, but you're now trying to get it picked up as a script. It's hard. I mean, there's a lot more books published every year than movies that get, converted from books into films. So, it can be a bit of a tough sell, and it has to be marketable. I mean, most feature films, the directors and certainly the producers are thinking about the return on investment. Who's the audience? What's the potential in the market for this? And, it's extremely competitive and difficult. So if you decided you wanted to go in the independent route, you still might be looking at some competition. There's a writer, April Sinclair, whose book is being made into a movie as we speak. She wrote her 2 books, Coffee Will Make You Black and Ain't Gonna Be the Same Fool Twice, back in the 90s. And they're great books. I always thought that they were so cinematic and really would make great films. And now, how many decades later, she is finally working with a director and production company that is making her film into her book into a film. But it'd be cool to have people like that speak specifically to this topic. Maybe that's another webinar idea, actually, because I think, demystifying that process a little bit would be great. Rosemary, actor and writer with a horror short at Rhode Island International Film Festival. Cool. So was this a film that was there last year, or was that, is it coming, are you screening it this year? Adam Camera, would you consider doing a poetry workshop? I don't know if I'm the right person for that anymore, honestly. I know I am a jack of all trades, or a Jill of all trades. It's true. And I actually have published some poetry, but I don't know that I'm the best person to teach poetry at this point. I think there's better people out there for that. Do you write poetry? That's something new I'm learning. Yeah, plays are really interesting too. And there's lots of local theaters that work with plays. Adam Camera, I see you're working on a play. Yeah, and there's so many great ideas. I mean, a play is a great way to get something off the ground without having to deal with all the technical parts of making a film. But everything has its pros and cons, right? So Rob says that he does freelance post-production and is interested in working with more women filmmakers. That's cool. Great. Okay, it premiered in 17, Rosemary, and it's on the festival circuit now. So yeah, at some point I had to decide with my short film, was I going to try to keep getting it into more film festivals, or was I going to just put it online? And at some point I decided I just wanted to get more people to be able to watch it. And so I wasn't really seeking distribution for that particular project. And again, it was more about making it available so that it could start a conversation. And so, after I did the festival thing for a couple of years, then I put it online. When we do the online New England Film Festival, it's, we make sure that the filmmakers are really ready to have their film online for 45 days or a month and a half or however long the festival runs. Because if you're in the midst of sort of screening your film, some festivals want to make sure that you are not screening it online yet. Not all, a lot of them don't care anymore, actually, because it's a totally different experience to see something online than it is to see something in a theater. But that we always tell filmmakers who are interested in the festival, or if they get accepted to the festival and then they decide they don't want to, we always say you can wait till next year and just have the film be part of the festival next year, because we're not looking to undercut anybody. By the way, I should mention too that we recently at New England Film did a pretty significant purge of our email list. We switched over to Constant Contact. And if you are not getting our emails, then please make sure you go to NewEnglandFilm.com/subscribe and submit your email there so that you can make sure that you get our email address, our email blasts, which are only like once or twice a month. So it's not that frequent. But, I think, Marcia, are you a Rhode Islander? I'm just curious. I think, having your film screen at local festivals is a great way of, you're Massachusetts, okay, of getting traction, because festivals love filmmakers to show up. They really want to do Q&As. Also, filmmakers tend to bring audience members. And when say it's a collection of, 6 short films that are screening, if those filmmakers are local, then they're more likely to bring people to the festival. And part of the way that the festival makes money is through ticket sales. So, and most festivals really want to highlight local filmmakers, very much so. So, you're always better off thinking about local film festivals as a way in to maybe even a slightly higher echelon film festival than you would have been able to get into if it was in, Denver or something like that. So looking carefully at what are the local film festivals is important. And if you want to get a sense of what some of those are, go to NewEnglandFilm.com/festival. And that will give you a list of the festival partners that we we partner with, and that's, let me put this link on here, because that's a way for you to see how there's a lot of smaller and bigger film festivals. Like you said, the Rhode Island International Film Festival is I think the only film festival in New England that's an Oscar qualifying film festival. And what that means is that the film that wins Best Short that year will qualify to be considered for the short in the Oscars, which is a pretty significant thing. Obviously, they screen a lot of shorts, and the chances that yours is going to be the one that A, gets in, and then B, wins that award. It's not that likely, but it is a great thing. And then, but there's also lots of other smaller film festivals that that give you more exposure for your film, help you reach your audience, and help you kind of build up your name in the industry. So keep at it. The other thing I was going to post here is the subscribe link. Hard to talk for this long. I'm a talker, but usually when I have classes that go an hour, I don't talk for the whole time. I make the students talk, but you guys just get to type, and I have to sit here talking the whole time. A paranormal pick, Lennon. That does sound good. I think it is a lot about how you pitch it, right? Pitching a story is really important, and there's another way you can do funding for documentaries. Salem Film Fest does a Doc's pitch. It's a what do they call it? Massachusetts. And it's a Massachusetts documentary filmmakers pitching event. So you can apply to be part of that, and you can pitch your project, and you get a $5,000 grant, usually for post-production. But in terms of pitching, you want to make sure you really hone those bits. And that can be another thing that Stage 32 might actually help you, Marcia, because they bought a company called Happy Writers at some point, and Happy Writers so now is part of Stage 32, but they have lots of resources for writers, and you can have people, you can even hire people to like review your pitch or your log line, things like that, which may be helpful. I've never used that service, but it seems like, definitely you want to make sure that you get the right sort of industry feedback before you start shipping and sending it out. What should be in your query? What do you want to highlight? I mean, everybody wants everyone to already have an audience before they do a project. It's super annoying, but what is the brand that you've sort of built, and who's the audience base that you have? So Marcia, for you in particular, I would think really about what is the audience for your book, and how loyal is that audience, and how do you kind of maximize that so that you can, this book would be important to them. I mean, there's a reason why there's so many Marvel films, right? Because there's a really well-established fan base for these kinds of films. So they kind of don't have to think much about like, will this be successful or not? So, you really want to have those kinds of demographics about who your audience is, and be able to articulate that and pitch it well. Cool. Have I done any acting? I really don't like to act. I have, but I don't mind being on camera at all. And I'm happy to be interviewed, and I can speak in front of people, all that. I have no problem with any of that. I have no fear of public speaking or being on camera or anything, but I really have trouble acting. There is a short film that I acted in when I did one of these 48-hour film projects, because we were kind of lazy about it and we didn't feel like doing any casting. So we just decided that whoever was in our group was going to be in it. And then the short ended up needing a woman, a mom in the piece. And so I think I might've been the only adult woman in our group. So I had to be that character. I find it extremely distracting to be in a film when you're trying to direct. I really don't prefer it. I don't know how people effectively do that. They obviously have something that I don't, some way of multitasking on that. So that's the first problem. And then the second problem is that I have trouble getting in a character. I'm not a good pretender or something, I guess. So in that short film, I basically just tried to be myself. And in fact, it was a short film called Bubblegum Ice Cream. And it was, my daughter was in it, and she was the main character. It's actually a very cute short film, not really for kids at all. But that's the one that I had mentioned that, if we had a better DP, I think it would have come out a little bit better. To film a short, I like this. You need minimum a DP, sound engineer, sound recordist, and editor, your cast, and then a good editor. That's from Rosemary. I think that sounds pretty good. When I made the short film Red Sneakers, I focused more on having all the cast and crew to really make a more professional short film. So for that, I had a DP, I had a dedicated sound person, I had obviously the cast, I had a lighting person actually, and that it really wasn't that expensive to have some of these crew members, and they were essential to making the film really look so much better than I would have ever been able to do. I mean, you can see that this is not professionally lit, right? You can tell. it makes a difference. And so even when, even when you do professional photos, like, if you're an actor or a director, anyone working in this industry, it's such a visual industry, have professional photos of yourself taken, I waited way too long to do that. I had been sending out my bio and scraping out some picture for years before I realized, why don't I get a professional photo of myself? But lighting is really important. Yes, it matters so much to how the film ultimately looks. And the lighting designer just is so fast at putting together the shot. And, you have to be ready when you're making a film to make changes on the fly. And that can be really, really sort of discouraging and frustrating and confusing. When I made the film Red Sneakers, I had conceived of this, I wrote and directed it, and there was a scene in the car, and we had imagined it that the car would be moving. She had gotten picked up from a babysitter, and her mom and her boyfriend were having a conversation with the kid in the back. And so we waited till it was a certain time of day for the right lighting and all of this. And then we couldn't get it to work. We just couldn't get it to work. We couldn't get the camera to work in the right way. There was too much reflection off the glass you couldn't see the characters through the glass, basically. So then we were thinking, what are we going to do? How do we do this? Do we make them walk? Do we put it in the car but have it stationary? How is this going to work? We need to rethink where the camera even is in this shot. And, we had to be flexible. That was also a really challenging project because we were working with kids, which is great. I love working with kids because kids are great pretenders and they're so spontaneous and they have no trouble acting for the most part. The hard part is that you really can't just say, oh, we're going to push through and stay all night, guys, when you've got a bunch of kids on your set. So you have to, and you also then have parents, obviously, with them. So it's a lot to contend with. And on location, you end up having, 2 to 3 times the number of people that the cast is. But yeah, I also think it's a great idea to storyboard your film, especially if it's a short. There's really no reason not to before you make it, even a rough storyboard, so you kind of know what you want it to look like before you go out and do it. It's hard to have the discipline to do this because it's another step and it's time consuming, but I think it's important. So I'm realizing that we actually are at our end time. So I think I'm going to start to wrap it up here. I really appreciate all of you who came out for this. I've never done an Ask Me Anything or a YouTube Live. So this was a big experiment. I really wasn't even sure if you guys would show up. I don't know. I never did this. So it was very fun. Great to hear all your questions. Oh, food on the set. Yes, good idea. If you're not paying people, you better at least have food. But I appreciate all your questions. I hope you'll all, make sure to follow us on, subscribe on New England Film/subscribe. You could certainly subscribe to our YouTube channel, although in the past we haven't posted a lot here, but maybe we'll start to. I don't know. My contact information, my website, I'll put it here too, is MicheleMeek.com, and you can reach me there and read more about what I do. And thanks for everyone coming out. Thanks, Adam Camera, for coming out. I look forward to maybe doing this again at some point. Thanks a lot.